You're listening to What's Good Sacramento, where we not only talk about real estate and home loans, but what's going on in the greater Sacramento area. What's new, what's hot, what is going on. You're here with Mac, the mortgage man, and Lisa, your local Sacramento realtor. Let's jump on into today's show. What's good, Sacramento? I'm ready to have a great day. Lisa's here with us. Lisa, how you doing today?
Hey Mac, good morning. I'm doing great. I felt like I woke up better. I've had a great workout week. I just feel like, when you're at the end of the month and you just like hit your goals, I'm right there on the cusp.
You're on the
So,
goal hitting, huh?
yeah, I'm trying to hit it hard.
All right,
But
I love that.
I'm thinking back, it's story time. We all need to make a little steady income. And I've been thinking about this because when we talk about goals and setting goals, I personally was talking about like my fitness goals,
Mm,
eating healthier, whatnot. But we've also had a couple meetings this week and we talked to folks about, in our meetings, goals, right? We've got to set up goals so that we can attain or achieve where we want to be in maybe 6 months, 1 year, 2 years of time when it comes to real estate,
mm-hmm.
right? So I thought about this article. It's called and from CNBC, and it was so crazy because when I was reading through it, they were talking about like annual incomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are the top seven cities where $250,000 is like the least purchasing power possible?
Right.
And I'm thinking, okay, so what do you think, Mac? What's your guess? Which city do you think they rated as number one?
Well, I know the rankings that come out, and so I would say if I can name a couple, I don't know one, but
One.
I would imagine that San Jose is very high up there. LA, San Francisco, New York.
There you go. You hit it. New York City. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That wasn't too bad of a shock to me. I was like, I haven't been there, but I've heard it's super expensive. It's
Mm,
also quite lovely in some parts. My sister was just out there like a few months ago and she's got family out there. So she tells me all about it. And like
mhm.
they live in high rise and, it's just wonderful. But not all of us are as privileged, right? To have that top tier income.
Right.
So what's crazy is when I was reading through the article, then it kind of hooked me because I'm like, all right, so where do we land or what's next up in the lineup for cities where that amount of income is the least?
Mm-hmm.
And number two was Honolulu. Have
Oh
you been to
wow.
Hawaii?
I didn't think of that, but I do know that it's really expensive to live there. And the interesting thing
Yes.
is like I'm thinking what when the rankings come out for real estate, right? And what does that look like as far as the most expensive places to purchase a property? And I would think that like it would all correlate over, but it makes sense. I know that even though it's more expensive to buy a property and like somewhere doesn't necessarily mean the other things there are as expensive, food cost,
Right.
transportation, or whatever it may be. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I have heard that it's extremely expensive to be um, in Hawaii.
Period. Like when
Yeah.
you're talking about food, transportation,
Hmm.
I went there and I'm like, it's expensive all around. So that didn't shock me too much. I can't personally say that I would have rated that as number two. Number three was San Francisco. You mentioned that,
Hmm.
my home city, born and raised. It's super expensive there. We all know this. Everybody's pushing out, right?
Yeah.
Coming out to the Central Valley. A lot of you natives out here are upset about it, but it's affordable.
Right.
Number four, you listed it too, LA.
Hmm.
That's a no-brainer. I was out just maybe like 5 months ago or so, lined up a bunch of properties along the coastline to show, and I was blown away at what $1 million property plus looked like. I mean, you're talking barely a two-bedroom, one bath,
Hmm.
just so tiny, really much older. So the dollar factor and how far it can stretch and go, it's crazy when you think about these like top rated cities and where you need to be.
Right.
So Mac, I mean, what do you think about all that?
Well, it's getting more expensive just in general to be alive, I find, in America at least, or at least California, right? I mean, I can't speak to other parts of America, but California, definitely, and we happen to be Sacramento's, one of the largest growing. We've talked about this, you and I.
Yeah.
I think that Sacramento is the same thing that like Bakersfield is to the SoCal area, where people are moving from LA up to Bakersfield. People are moving from the Bay Area into Sacramento, and it's getting more and more expensive to be out here and to live. And I mean, outside of just general inflation, which obviously is making it more difficult on every front, the cost to be out here is just pretty high. And so when we're looking at what's going on in like Sacramento area, and we're paying attention to mortgages and things like that, the average mortgage out here, median mortgage, has risen significantly, right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen
Yeah.
this on the real estate side. We used to see that like between like right around 4 to 450, right? I think that was
Right.
like pretty close, but it's up now. I want to say it's closer to like 5 to 550 now. And
Mm.
that's only going to continue to be higher because yes, if even if property values continue to drop, little by little, um, all of the new large construction out here, all of the properties that are like actual homes, not townhomes and things like that, are driving that price point up, right? Because they're not building homes that are in the 300s or in the 400s anymore. Their lowest is going to be the 500s and really closer to the sixes, right? So,
Mm.
that's kind of what we're looking at. And, I know you sort of mentioned earlier, the median earning, right? And when we're looking at like what do people need to earn, what's the debt to income need to look like, and things like that. Um, it always really depends on your situation, right? We can't
Mm.
boilerplate like one thing for you, boilerplate one thing, but typically here in Sacramento, you need to have if we're doing like a minimum down payment for you, you need to have about $30,000 saved. You need to be making over $100,000,
Mhm.
and you need your debt to income needs to be pretty low if you want to, excuse me, continue to move up and things like that. And so I would say it's safe. I mean, the regulations is 49%, right? So you need to
Mm.
be 49% or lower. But if you want, the best of the best, we really say you should be like in the 30s. So,
Yeah, and when we're talking about minimum down payment, you and I just had this conversation a few days ago, with some clients and just giving numbers, what is an example of like a minimum down payment, for those of us out there that don't really know what that is or looks like.
mhm. You're asking me?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, well, it used to be we used to say like 20,000. And
Mhm.
that's partly because it's not just your down payment, it's also your closing cost. So the lowest you can really get into a property is 3%. Um, and this is outside of like any seller concessions or anything like that. So we're just going to go straight forward here. But typically, like 3 to 3.5% is what you're going to need for a down payment. Then you have everything else, right? The closing costs, the taxes, any other thing we need to like have together for a closing.
Right.
And that's typically we tell people 2 to 3% is what you should have prepared for that. So you're looking at 5% of the purchase cost. So 5% of $500,000 or $600,000 or whatever that is. And interesting enough, I just had a friend reach out to me yesterday about a property, 615, 6 bedroom, 3 bath property, pretty nice place out in Yuba City. And we were looking at interest rates, and I know this is a little, off topic a little bit, but when we bought our house, rates were, low. You could get under 3%. So I kind of did the math for him. I said, hey, if you want to buy this for fun, this property, if you would have bought this 2 years ago, at let's say 2.99%, you would have been
Right.
paying about in total cost, not just your mortgage, total cost, about $3,050. But if you would buy that same house now at the same cost at 7%, which is realistically where you're going to be at, it's $1,500 more a month, right? It's
It's a tough
4,000,
pill to swallow.
yeah,
Yeah.
$4,500 a month, which is a lot, right? So,
Yeah.
um it's getting harder and harder, and what that means is people need to plan more and more, right?
Yes. But which brings up a fine point. Lucky us that a lot of us listening in, or you and I reside here in Sacramento County, because Forbes Advisor actually rated Sacramento as the city to live in California, number two on the list. So, hey, number
We
two, let's
made
go.
it. I'm saying, dude, we're on every list. That's the thing, right? That's why I think
Yes,
Sacramento is such an interesting case study right now
it
because,
is.
and I think this is going to be, this is helpful for people because we are in, I always say this, we're in such a weird place. We're in a weird place, right? Because Sacramento is such a weird place because we've always been sort of a city, but also we had our rule like, Elk Grove and Folsom, it was farmland, and then it started to develop, and now we're getting more and more metro, and we're in the middle of that transition right now, and on top of the transition of our city, we're dealing with all the interesting things that are going on in the real estate market.
And you know what's crazy? So we talked about this like a few sessions back about the developments that are happening in downtown Sacramento.
Mhm.
And I was driving close to Garden Highway, like in that area, and you just see tons of new high-rise buildings. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everything we talked about, it's like in the makings right now, and it's
Mhm.
super exciting, right? So, what does Sacramento, our audience out there, have to look forward to right here in the real estate market? And so, that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit right here in Sacramento, and just kind of zone in on a little community that might be tucked away or forgotten about if you don't drive down south, a little south of downtown, which is Elk Grove, right?
Mhm.
I personally resided in Elk Grove for about over 18 years, so I'm very well versed with the community. It's a very close knit community, very family oriented.
I think
um,
it's funny how you say you grew up in San Francisco, but then you literally have been in Sacramento for like 20
for that
years.
long.
Yeah,
Well, because
I
I'm
feel
older.
yeah,
I'm
but
not old,
but
I'm
I
just
feel like
older.
you can say that you grew up in Sacramento now because
Half
you've
half,
been
right?
here, right? Like
I'm not really liking the way you're pointing towards age. No,
no, no, no, I would never.
just kidding.
Mm,
Anyway, so when we're talking about Elk Grove, I wanted to just kind of point out to our audience the average median sold price. Previous year to date in 2022 was 707,000. That's pretty high. That was when we were like at that peak.
mm,
Today's average median sold price from January to June is 640. So you can see a
that's
slight
gone
decline
down.
there. 9.5, yeah,
Mm,
percent, which is uh the highest percentage since we've been talking and selecting cities week over week.
mm.
This is probably the highest,
Right, the
uh,
decline, right?
exactly
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
decline, which means affordability, right?
Mhm,
So if we're looking for areas that, I want to get into a house almost at that 500 mark, it's still a little bit higher than that,
mhm,
depending, right? But this might be an area of choice for you to select when
mhm.
you're choosing real estate. So, when we're talking about community, cost of living, tell us a little bit about the interest rates and how that can compare.
No, definitely. So, well, before I jump in, I just want to kind of comment on everything you're saying because I don't look at the real estate numbers as much as I used to because I don't do real estate as much, right? You guys do that. You do, my realtor partners. So I'm more pay attention to the rates and things like that. But I did during, that big, era where everybody was stuck inside. I did go with, some people on our team who were looking at very high valued properties, and I often forget just because, we often work with people that are closer to like the median range, maybe a little bit higher. And, every occasion we will, we're still sort of new in the industry, get those $1 million clients, right? So I sometimes
Mm.
forget how much real estate in Sacramento is in that range. There's a lot,
Right.
right?
Oh,
And when everything went down and the prices went up, it took these houses or these homes that were not quite in that, and it took them into that area, right?
yeah.
So When we're looking at the 707, we're looking at the 640, don't freak out and be like, oh, I can't buy a house, because that's
Right.
not the case. We have multi-million dollar properties layered all through the greater Sacramento area. And that's gonna do this. And there were homes, that sold for 200, 300, 400. I mean, there's a whole range here. I think that's sort of the nice part about Sacramento, is that we do have a nice range of properties. Now it's getting a little more expensive, but that is what it is. But let's go ahead and jump into the rates. So I'm gonna go ahead and share this. I just want to make sure you're seeing everything I'm seeing.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and look at what rates are looking at. We haven't had much of a shift. If you've been listening into the show, we're sitting at 6.9 for a 30-year fixed. And we see all of these sort of adjustments that are happening as we go to a 15-year or a jumbo loan. Um, and so, we're sitting pretty steady on this front. We can see here we've had a big increase over, this was 2021, right? So we're right here, and we're seeing this drop in the market, and then we're starting to see the increase. And if you're looking at the year there, we can start to see this increase, this massive increase. And we've seen little valleys and things like that. And I'm kind of pointing this out because I really want people to understand where they feel like, okay, like rates are going up, they're going up, they're going up. Yes, but you can see in these, there's always going to be slight dips. And if you are trying to purchase, it's our job, or my job, to try to find these dips for you, even when things are rising, right? Because look at right here, Lisa,
Hmm.
30-year fix, right? And this was October 24th. And we have a 7.13, right?
Right.
We go just a couple days later and we're
That's
down to a
crazy.
6.34, right? I mean, that's pretty substantial in, like, just a couple days, a week or whatever. We're really seeing a drop here. So it's important that you have somebody that's paying attention to what's going on. Now, keep in mind, this is just a tool. When we want more exact rates and things like that, we really need to be looking into specific programs with specific lenders, because there can be slight adjustments there. But ultimately, that's sort of where we're sitting at. And so, we got to plan accordingly. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much where we're going to be sitting. And, it's not, it is what it is. That's the best way that I can tell people, right? We plan for what situation we're given, and we find a way to make it work. And maybe that means that you're going to have to plan a little bit longer, and we're going to have to be working. We're setting up stuff for people right now, 1 to 3 years out, right? And we're saying, look, that's fine. Like, don't feel ashamed, don't feel bad, don't feel guilty. We really need to focus on kind of what's going on, and find a way for you to be successful, because I still believe that the American dream is to own a home. And when you are in the industry like us, and it's almost like when you're in banking, you're in finance, you're in real estate, you're let behind the curtain, right? And you're seeing the wizard, and you're seeing how everything works, and you're like, oh wow, it really is, beneficial to own a home. And it really is, it's not an asset until you really own all of it, unless you're going to leverage the debt that's in it. So we understand that. But um over the 30-year period and what you're paying, and at the end, it's really just staggering, that how
Right.
valuable it is to own a home, right? And we kind of get to see that.
Well, and then just to piggyback your points, it's kind of the pros and cons. It's like if you can afford to get yourself into a home anytime in the near future, you want to consider, am I willing to pay a higher interest rate? Right.
Mhm.
But then again, the sales price of my house, which I can never change, how much I bought that house for, is slightly less
Mm,
than it was even a year ago.
right.
So those are things to consider.
Yeah,
Because interest
absolutely.
rates always jump up and down, but so does real estate.
Hmm.
But ultimately, how much am I going to indebt myself to pay back that
Right.
I'm borrowing
Yep.
overall? So those are just things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And unlike other, right? I mean, real estate, when you're purchasing something, right? Like if you buy a car, very rarely are you going to buy a car that's going to hold its value or grow in value unless you're buying like old cars that you're really never going to drive, or you're buying high end luxury cars that, again, you got to be careful. And so, either way, right? I mean, real estate's very interesting in that way, and it depends on where you're at in the country, even in California. But Sacramento, the way I'm looking at it, with water rights, with proximity to the ocean and to Sacramento, or to San Francisco, to the tech, to some of the greatest colleges in the country, some really great schools, Tahoe. I think it's a pretty safe bet to purchase out here, and put your money there, right? So, but let's talk about Elk Grove because that is our area that we are talking about today. Apparently, Lisa's barely lived out there for 20 years, so just barely, like, really, like,
Barely,
hitting the
barely a
surface,
resident
yeah, of
here.
what's going on out there. Um, but either way, so we're talking about Elk Grove, and it's a neighboring, again, we talk about the greater Sacramento area because it really gets all lumped into one. But Elk Grove is its own community with its own vibe and its own, culture. And it's really about like 16 miles from downtown. Everything is sort of 20 minutes from downtown. That I feel
We've
like when,
decided on that
yeah, when we
factor,
have
huh?
conversations with people, like, that's about 20 minutes. Yeah.
It's about,
Unless
yeah.
there's traffic and then plan for more, So, but anyway, the population out there sitting about 181,000. So, it's pretty big. And the thing I like about Elk Grove, and it's been a long time since I was in college actually, but one of my fraternity brothers, his dad or stepdad grew gigantic pumpkins. I don't know if you know
Oh,
this, but there's like gigantic pumpkin contests out in
yeah.
that area. Yeah.
Did they do the little pumpkin patch and enter they have like,
Yeah, yeah, it was, we
yeah,
had to go help
yeah.
him lift it into a truck. It took 6 of us, I think, and I think it weighed like 600 pounds or something like that. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was big. So there's weird stuff still going on like that out in Elk Grove, right? They still have some of that country vibe, but
It
there's a lot of
does.
city going on out there, right? And if you're looking to rent out there, um hold your wallets, ladies and gentlemen, because we're looking at a median rent price of $2,700. I still find that it's crazy that, like, I think what it is renting in like these more rural communities, which they're not
Mm,
rural, but they're not downtown. You are getting a larger space and you're renting a home typically. So the renting
okay.
cost is up, right? Where like I would have thought like renting in downtown Sacramento would be the most expensive place ever, but apparently it isn't. If you're gonna rent a home, it's gonna cost you, right? And so that $2,700, and oh man,
That's not
that's,
even your utilities, your other
yeah.
expenses. That's just base
Yeah.
rent.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, right? You gotta add a couple more $100 on a month, just for the utilities and all of that. So, yeah, there's stuff going on there. But why don't we talk a little bit about the communities and what the activities that are going on out in the Elk Grove area?
Yes, folks, it's officially summer. Woo! I mean, first of all, yesterday's heat, crazy. I mean, we go
Dude,
from
it got
like
up to
just,
100.
I
It was
know, I'm
like,
like, but we all know, we knew it was going to happen. You're just kind of
yeah,
sitting,
but the
waiting.
way it came
It
in, right? It
just,
doesn't typically like and we're not a
there's no
weather
deep
channel,
thinking
right?
into this weather,
We're not a weather
but
channel, but freaking A, dude. It's like hot and then cold and then raining and then it's
we
like
went out.
barely in the 80s
Yeah.
and then it's up to 100. And I think it's supposed to get up to over 100 in the next couple days, or like 106 or something.
Yeah, okay, so it was wild. So, like, I felt like a teenage kid sneaking out of the house because my
Nice.
little one wasn't home
Mm,
last night, right? So we're like, "Hey, let's go to the gym. We can actually go late."
mm,
We step out of the house, it's still like 90. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's hot."
mm,
But, I'm thinking about heat and, we want to think about like, how are we going to cool off? So those are some of the things I've noticed in doing research in every community that we featured thus far in these more like family residential neighborhoods or communities that we've pointed out. Elk Grove is one of them also that has like a huge and I'm talking huge aquatic center.
Mhm.
It just looks like a water park. I haven't personally been there yet, but I drove by it, and I used to live in the neighboring community right there. So it's just amazing to me how they'll take a piece of land and completely convert it to like a whole water park thing.
Right.
And you're just like, man, I used to run around that area
Mhm.
and could have never imagined all the buildup that they've done over there. Aside from like the Sutters and other things and Costco, which is crazy. It's all
Mhm.
right there, right off of Elk Grove Boulevard. So they've
Mhm.
got that. It's got a large competitive pool. I think about you when I see aquatics pools. I'm like, oh, you did a lot of like things related to swimming, right? And instructor and all that. A 25-yard instructional pool. I'm like, I don't really know what that means. I mean, is that huge? Tell me, what does that mean? Is that impressive to you?
Well, I don't wanna brag, but I do believe that I am the best swim instructor in the greater Sacramento area, hands down. I can take your kid
Hey,
from not swimming if they're at least 3 years old, right? And 5, I can take them in an hour and they'll be swimming, right? And safely, right? That's the thing. But let's not turn this into a Mac bragging session about how I'm the best.
right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I grew up loving the pool. I was told that I could swim before I could walk. Don't know how true that
Wow.
is, but I do know, and I remember vividly sneaking into when I think we lived in like an apartment complex or something when I was very young, before
Mhm.
I was in school. So I had to have been like 3 or 4 or something. Sneaking in, you know how they have the lock gates when you go in?
Yeah,
I
I have
stuck
my own stories.
paper in the lock so I could sneak in. So somebody went, I snuck paper in there, and then I snuck in and I went swimming and I got in trouble for like, but I could swim or whatever. So I've
Oh,
always loved the pools and I grew up a lifeguard, I grew up a swim instructor, eventually became a coach um and did triathlete training and stuff like that. And so yeah, pools matter to me. It's why we got a pool and it's a lot of work and it's expensive. But that's one of the great things. If you don't want the responsibility of a personal pool, that's what we're seeing a lot more in these areas where these new constructions are coming are community pools, right? That are specific for your small community, clubhouses that are really nice. And we haven't really talked about many clubhouses, but huge pools in there. Now, 25 yards is very interesting because that's like a lap pool, right? And not a
mhm.
lot of communities build lap pools, but I have seen some that have a lap pool and they have a recreational pool, which is awesome. And my favorite pool is here in Sacramento in the Arden area, and it's a 50-meter pool, which is an Olympic size pool.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
beautiful. Arden Hills, I used to coach out there. I'm not quite rich enough yet to have a membership there, but I'm that's my goal, guys. Let's make it
It is a
hashtag
very,
yeah.
very beautiful
Hashtag
community.
get Mac a membership at Arden Hills. All right. That's your guys' goal for the next couple years. Support the show. Get me a membership out there. Um, but yeah, I love pools and there's a lot of other things going on in the Elk Grove area. I don't want to take too much of your thunder, right? But we really have, we have the casino out there, the Sky River Casino, and that's I think about like 100,000 square feet or something like that. It's like pretty big, right? The
You
gaming
know what's
space.
crazy? I don't mean to cut you off, but I was just thinking like for years,
Hmm.
that piece of property was sitting there. There was an old builder that took it, purchased it, was going to develop it. I don't know quite what it was supposed to. I think it was supposed to be a mall, like a
Mm-hmm.
strip mall. And it sat for years. And then to think now they've turned it over into the casino. So yeah, tell us more about it. I was just like, wow.
Well, they have over 2,000 slot machines. Excuse me, about 80 gaming tables, which is pretty interesting. I don't really gamble. I like to play poker with people who are also bad at poker because it lasts long and it's fun. I wouldn't like go up against somebody that was actually good. I'd get taken. But I like to play that. I'll play a little craps. But other than that, I'm not a huge gambler. I like to keep my money where I can see it, right? So but I'm sure fun environment and things like that. And we have other things out there. Strikes Bowling. I used to work at the Cal Fit that's over there in Sunrise area. Sunrise.
Mhm.
And the right where the Strikes Bowling is, right?
Oh, you're
Laguna.
talking about
Sorry,
Laguna
Laguna.
in Elk Grove.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. In
Yep.
the Laguna area, and I used to be aquatic manager out there, and I love that area. Honestly, I think a lot of great families out there. Everybody was super nice, and everything was really nice and like upkept and clean. And Strikes Bowling was over there, and so actually I've played over there before. It was pretty fun. Um, there's a couple other things that go on out there. We have the annual festival for Elk Grove, which is really fun. I always, whenever I hear a festival, I always think of a couple. I think of the chocolate festival, the cherry festival, the asparagus festival, which is like gigantic. And I grew up when I was really young in Brentwood, where they have the corn festival,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
that I have vivid memories of being all over the corn festival and the crazy fireworks show that they do during the summer. And so a lot of fun, but I haven't been to the one in Elk Grove. Have you?
I
I would
have
hope
been
so.
to, yeah, I've
Yeah.
been to a few festivals. But it's just really interesting. You say earlier, you're like, they have some weird,
Yeah.
quirky things that still have a country feel, but they have
Mm-hmm.
this other, the Strauss's Festival. It's like an enchanted
Mm-hmm.
outdoor out night, kind of play, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. And they do a huge fireworks show after.
Mm-hmm.
I personally haven't seen it, but I was like, that's pretty cool to think that it's right there. And you can just enjoy that and bring your whole family if you
Mm-hmm.
want.
Yeah,
You know.
and they have other festivals going on out there in the Elk Grove area, right? I know they do one where they have dancing, fireworks, which is, I'm a big fireworks guy. Like, I don't want to light fireworks, but I definitely still, like a child, am very awed when I see fireworks in the sky. I'm like, ooh, that's nice. So,
Yeah.
definitely something to look forward to. And I think, those are coming up in July, right? So definitely look at the calendar, pay attention to that, see what's going on. I think we have that, and then I know that sometime in September, maybe early September, there's a multicultural festival that's out there as well. So a lot of fun stuff going on. I'm sure we're missing about a billion things that are going on in Elk Grove, but just a little bit of the highlight. It's really, I think, a big family community out there. So a lot
Yeah.
going on out in that front. But enough about that, enough about the community, enough about the activities. Let's go ahead and jump into what projects are going on in the Sacramento area, or sorry, in the Elk Grove area.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to kind of piggyback what you were saying. The reason why I think we like to talk about what's going on is because even on the real estate side, when we're showing properties, one of the things I tell my clients is take the time and immerse yourself into the neighborhoods of the areas of which you'd like to live. Check them out at different times of day,
Mhm.
morning, afternoon, evening, because you'll get a real feel. Check out the schools, drive by the parks. So these are things that we kind of highlight, but it gives you ideas, because if you're definitely seriously considering a small city like Elk Grove, which actually isn't quite that small with over 181,000 folks living there, it's worth your time to
Mhm.
go check out some of these things, right? But yes, as far as communities, I always try to find ones, because there's a lot popping up, the ones that are more affordable, right? So that we don't get too afraid by that purchase price. So Taylor Morris is offering a community there. It's called Grange at Meridian Ranch in Elk Grove. So they range from about 1,600 to 23, a little over 2,300 square foot homes, featuring the Ring video doorbells. I think these are some of the standardized features I'm seeing now
Mhm.
on new homes, is the Ring, which I had to buy my own, but now you get that right in your house. Wi-Fi garage door opener, electronic door locks. These are just kind of little, those added things that you don't really consider until you get into a house and you're like, wait a minute, I don't have, my Ring, or you'd have to be out of pocket.
Right, like it's
These
nice to have that stuff, right?
exactly.
And you don't think
Yeah,
like we didn't think about a camera system in our house. We're just like, oh, look at the
right.
house. It's cool. It's great. It's got water. And then we got in, and we're like, oh, we really want to have a security system around our house. And we're like, okay, well, there's $1,500 gone, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. You think about the cost, and you just spent all this money getting into my home. So that's why I think like some of these little added features that they're throwing in there, it's wonderful. But I'll tell you, kind of funny side point is, in the community that we live, we go to the pool, take the little one. I swear you hear a lot of the I would say parents at the pool, everybody's phones are going off with their ring. 'Cause
Uh-huh.
Amazon's going around doing their deliveries, and
Yeah.
everybody's got that same ring, tone on their
Yeah.
phone. It
It
just
would be funny
cracks
if you
me up.
had, like, 7 neighbors in a row who all had Amazon and they went off one by one, like, "Oh, there's
It
Bob, and
sounds
there's
like that
Jen,
though when
there's
you're at the
Ken."
pool.
Yeah,
It's like you hear everybody's ring on their
yeah,
because everyone's in the pool enjoying, and I'm sitting back watching the little one. I'm just cracking up because 'cause I'm like, "Oh my gosh," you can't help but check your phone every time, right?
yeah.
So when we're talking about price points and price range, their starting range is about 564.
Mhm,
You said, which I thought was hitting the nail right on the head, 500, 550 is our new average median price. Then you're right, for new homes, guys, brand new. If you're looking in that price point,
mhm,
here we go. The Brenton, it's a little over 1,600 square feet. It's a single story, 2 to 3 bedroom, 2 car garage, 2 bath. I think
mhm.
that's pretty good. Considering if I'm a new homeowner, small family, first time buyer, it might be something I might want to get myself into.
Right.
And then we jump to the higher, price point. The biggest property that they are featuring there, it's a 2 story. It's called the Mustang,
Mm,
2,300 square feet, 4 bedroom, 3.5 bath. And I think that point five matters. Let me tell you why. Because when you're considering the floor plan to a property and you walk into a home, I want you to consider I have guests that come over. I don't want to have all my guests going upstairs to the
mhm.
bathrooms, or going through the downstairs bathroom into that private, setting to use the restroom. I've got a half bath
Right.
that's accommodating,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's important to consider.
Yeah, when I'm
So,
looking at 3.5 bath in my brain, I'm thinking 2 upstairs and, 1 full downstairs and 1 half downstairs. I don't know if
yeah,
that's the
you can
layout,
have
but
that.
I think that's what it probably looks
Yeah.
like.
It can, especially if they offer that downstairs bedroom too, which we've noticed some of
Right.
the communities that we've talked about offers that. This one in particular doesn't have that,
Mhm.
fourth bedroom downstairs, but I think it's great to have that half bath. So if any of you guys are interested in hearing more about, what's out there in newer communities or even just any community in the greater Sacramento area, call me. I would be more than happy to get a list together and set up tours for you.
Mhm.
So
Well,
Max,
I
what
like
else
how
would
they're
you like to
building
know?
one stories because, you know, essentially what's going on in my life is I don't really plan on buying a two-story property unless I'm gonna rent it. We'll likely stay in like one-story properties, and I like the old style. Like we used to build really wide, right? Like single stories that are like
Ranch style?
2,000, 3,000 square feet. Like really, like 4,000 square. They're crazy, right? And they don't really build like that anymore, right? We have this Brenton at 1678 for a single story, and then if you want to get larger, you got to go up, right? So um, I like that they're building the single story one. For me personally, I think will likely kind of grow into something that's a little longer, but I like what's going on out there. So just throwing that out
Nice.
there.
Yes. So what else do our listeners need to know, Mac?
Well, they only need to know a couple things. One is we're sorry that we did not get you guys a show last week. Technical problems do come up, believe it or not. It was a nightmare. Lisa was watching me, and it ended up taking me about a week to fix the problems. There was about 3 sessions that I had to fix all these problems. So, we're gonna do our best to be as consistent as we can. But life happens, technology happens, and just don't be sad. Just watch one of our old episodes if you're missing our voices, right? On top of
We're
that,
back.
yeah, on top of that, it's really important to remember that if you are a listener to the show and you are interested, go over to macthemortgageman.com, go click on one of our sessions, schedule time for myself and Lisa to sit down with you. We can get it done in 30 minutes, but we really prefer like an hour. So we can talk about doing a credit report analysis for you, talk about doing community report analysis for you, do our home ownership roadmap for you, and really get you going in the direction that you need to go to. Now, if you're completely financial savvy and you have all the real estate information that you would ever need and you don't need us, congratulations. Um, I hope you do well. But most people need a little bit of help and they're not paying attention to, the same things that we are. So we're here to help. outside of that, guys, we're getting really close to America's birthday, right? So we're not going to see you guys, I think, until after that. So we just want to wish you guys a happy 4th of July. We hope everybody's safe. Watch plenty of fireworks and do the whole American thing. It's always a blast for my wife, who's from England, and I can brag about how we destroyed their country and just took over as the world dominating force. Super American centric, but gotta celebrate our birthday.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
You guys have a good one. We appreciate you guys for being on today.